My husband looked the judge dead in the eye and said, "Combat changed her, Your Honor. She isn't the woman she used to be. She is mentally unstable and unfit to raise our daughter." Beside him, my mother-in-law smirked, whispering, "Those medals won't help you today." They spent months painting me as a broken, dangerous veteran, all to strip me of custody and get their hands on my $3.2 million estate. My lawyer begged me to speak up, but I kept my mouth shut. I just sat there in my dress uniform, perfectly still. But then, the judge opened my sealed service record. The courtroom fell into a suffocating silence as he read the classified pages. Slowly, his expression shifted to absolute shock. He closed the folder, looked at my husband, and asked, "Do either of you actually know who your wife really is?" Their faces turned extremely pale then. "My name is Diana Vance, and at 38 years old, I thought I had survived the worst storms life could throw at me. I spent 15 years serving my country, navigating high-stress operations where a single misstep could cost lives. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for the betrayal waiting for me in my own living room." It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when I returned home from a brief, 3-day logistics conference. I opened the front door, expecting to hear the sweet sound of my 7-year-old daughter, Lily, laughing or playing. Instead, the house was dead silent. Walking into the living room, I found my husband, Garrett, and his mother, Evelyn, sitting on our sofa. Beside them sat a man in a sharp gray suit holding a thick leather briefcase. Before I could even set my bags down, Garrett slid a stack of papers across the coffee table toward me. "Sign them, Diana," he said, his voice cold and devoid of any emotion. They were divorce papers. But it wasn't just a divorce. Garrett and Evelyn were demanding full custody of Lily, our house, and the entirety of my $3.2 million estate, wealth I had meticulously built through smart logistics and supply chain investments during my service. Evelyn leaned forward, a cruel smirk playing on her lips. "We're taking Lily, Diana. Garrett's lawyer has already drafted the petition. Combat changed you. You're volatile, emotionally detached, and mentally unfit to be a mother. We are going to make sure the court knows exactly what a broken soldier you really are." In the days that followed, the psychological warfare intensified. Garrett and Evelyn bombarded me with calls, emails, and subtle threats. They wanted me to surrender quietly, warning that a public court battle would destroy what was left of my reputation. "If you fight us, Diana," Garrett sneered during one tense phone call, "we will drag your medical records, your deployment history, and your troubled mental state into the spotlight. You'll lose your daughter, and everyone will know you're broken." The isolation was suffocating, reminiscent of my loneliest deployments in hostile territory. Even my own civilian lawyer, a local attorney named Paul, seemed completely intimidated by the expensive legal team Garrett's family had hired. "They're building a devastating case against your mental stability, Diana," Paul warned me, his voice trembling as he paced his office. "They have deep pockets and a ruthless strategy. I strongly advise you to compromise, sign the settlement, and take what you can get before things get ugly." But as Paul pleaded with me to surrender, a strange sense of calm washed over me. Garrett and Evelyn had made a fatal mistake. They had mistaken my quiet, military discipline for weakness. They didn't realize that in the face of an ambush, a real soldier doesn't panic. She plans. That night, sitting in the pitch dark of my quiet kitchen, I bypassed my lawyer entirely. I picked up my phone and dialed a highly secure private military line, reaching a retired colonel who specialized in classified veteran affairs. As I sat in my empty kitchen that night, staring at my daughter's drawing, I knew I was fighting for her life. Follow my story until the end to see how this battlefield settled, and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. "Colonel Miller," I said, holding my breath as I waited for him to pick up. I need my entire, complete sealed service record, the one from the intelligence archives. There was a long, heavy pause on the other end. Diana, those documents contain classified details of asset recovery operations. It requires strict federal clearance. I know, I replied, but they are using my service to completely destroy me. Garrett and Evelyn believed I was just a simple supply clerk who spent years in dusty warehouses. They had no idea who I really was. My actual designation was a prominent senior intelligence and logistics officer for a very specialized joint task force. My primary mission was tracking, identifying, and dismantling complex international financial fraud networks and reclaiming billions in stolen government assets. While Garrett assumed I was merely doing clerical work, I was actually leading intense forensic audits across 3 continents. I had undergone rigorous psychological evaluations every 6 months, all proving my mental stability was flawless. During my final deployment, my team had even uncovered a massive domestic shell company network. Now, with the Colonel's help, I was about to receive that authorized, sealed government folder. It contained not just my spotless military evaluations, but a detailed breakdown of a very specific local financial trail. Garrett thought he was playing a simple game of leverage against a vulnerable target, but he had unknowingly stepped onto a dangerous, intense tactical battlefield that I had spent 15 years of my life mastering. The day of the custody and asset hearing arrived with a heavy gray overcast. Walking into the sterile courtroom, I wore my crisp, formal dress uniform, every crease sharp and my medals aligned perfectly on my chest. I sat down beside Paul, my hands resting lightly on the table. Across the aisle, Garrett sat with a smug, confident grin, while Evelyn looked at me as if I were already a defeated stranger. Garrett's high-priced attorney didn't waste any time. He stood before the judge and launched into a ruthless, carefully orchestrated smear campaign. He projected fabricated journal entries on the screen and read aloud exaggerated accounts of what he called my dangerous PTSD outbursts. He painted a vivid, completely fictional picture of a broken, volatile woman who was a threat to her own child. "Your Honor," the lawyer boomed, "this woman's mind is a casualty of war. For Lily's safety, and to protect the family assets, custody must go to my client." Through it all, I remained completely silent, staring straight ahead. Evelyn leaned over to Garrett, a triumphant smirk plastering her face. They thought my silence was the quiet surrender of a broken woman who had finally run out of options. They truly believed they had secured my $3.2 million and custody of my sweet Lily. When it was our turn, Paul stood up, his previous hesitation entirely gone. Following my strict instructions, he didn't argue or yell. He simply walked to the judge's bench and presented a single, heavy, manila folder secured with thick, official red federal clearance seals. "Your Honor," Paul said with absolute confidence, "before we proceed, we request the court review the respondent's highly classified, sealed military record." The judge frowned, looking at the heavy seals, and picked up his sharp silver letter opener now. The judge sliced through the heavy red federal seals with a slow, deliberate scrape of his letter opener. He opened the thick folder and began to read. The courtroom fell into a suffocating, absolute silence, save for the occasional rustle of paper. At first, the judge's brow was furrowed with skepticism, but as his eyes skimmed down the first few pages, his entire demeanor shifted. He sat up straighter, his eyes widening in visible shock. The smug, relaxed posture Garrett had maintained just moments ago began to stiffen as he noticed the sudden tension in the room. "What is the meaning of this?" the judge muttered, almost to himself, looking down at the official documents. The documentation did not present the broken, unstable veteran my husband's team had fabricated. Instead, It laid out 15 years of flawless, exemplary service. It contained my spotless psychological evaluations, conducted every 6 months without fail, proving my mental stability was completely intact. But what truly caught the judge's attention was the official citation for the Medal of Distinguished Service, signed by the president himself, for my role in saving an entire intelligence unit during a highly dangerous, hostile asset recovery mission. But the real payload of the portfolio lay in the final section, the financial forensic audit. Using my advanced background in tracking covert international transactions, I had spent the last 6 months quietly compiling a mountain of undeniable evidence. The certified government documents prove that Garrett had been systematically embezzling millions of dollars from his own consulting partners. Even worse, the evidence showed a direct paper trail proving his desperate attempts to launder those stolen funds directly through my $3.2 million estate to hide them from federal regulators. He had been trying to use a forced divorce to seize my clean assets and cover up his crimes. The judge closed the folder slowly, looking directly at Garrett. He stared intensely at the documents, then at the trembling man before him. He let the folder drop heavily onto his desk, the sound echoing like a gunshot. He looked up. "Do either of you actually know who your wife really is?" The judge's voice echoed cold and sharp. He looked down at Garrett, his brow furrowed with immense anger. "Because according to this federal record, she is a highly decorated intelligence officer who just uncovered a massive trail of financial fraud, committed by you." The smug smile instantly vanished from Garrett's face, replaced by a sickly green tint. Evelyn gasped, clutching her purse as she looked in terror at her son. Garrett's lawyer scrambled forward to look at the documents, but the moment his eyes hit the federal clearance stamps and the detailed bank transaction logs, his face drained of all color. He leaned over and urgently whispered to Garrett, telling him to keep his mouth shut. "I am denying the petitioner's request for custody immediately," the judge declared, slamming his gavel down with an echoing crack. "Diana Vance is granted sole physical and legal custody of Lily. Furthermore, because of the overwhelming evidence of embezzlement and money laundering presented in this documentation, I am ordering an immediate freeze on all of Garrett's personal and business assets, pending a formal referral to federal investigators." Evelyn bolted to her feet, her voice shrill with desperation. "This is a lie! She's setting him up! You can't do this!" "Sit down, ma'am," the judge warned, his voice sharp. "Garrett Vance, you are facing massive federal charges." My husband collapsed back in his seat, completely broken by the weight of his own terrible choices. 3 months after that fateful day in the courtroom, the dust has finally settled, and a beautiful new chapter has begun. Lily and I relocated to a charming, sun-drenched cottage in a quiet coastal town, far away from the toxic reach of my former in-laws. For the first time in years, the heavy, suffocating weight on my shoulders is entirely gone. Every morning, I watch my daughter play happily in the front yard, without any fear. My $3.2 million estate is secure, but I knew I couldn't just sit on this wealth. Inspired by my own intense ordeal, I established a dedicated foundation that funds critical legal aid and financial education for female veterans facing predatory custody battles. I want to ensure no other mother in uniform ever feels as completely helpless and isolated as I did. Meanwhile, swift justice slowly ran its course back home. Garrett was formally indicted on multiple severe federal charges of embezzlement, wire fraud, and money laundering. His high-priced defense lawyers weren't cheap, forcing Evelyn to sell her prized luxury home just to keep her beloved son out of immediate jail time. Their wealth, built entirely on greed and deception, crumbled into nothing. They tried to ruin my life, but in their sheer arrogance, they only succeeded in destroying themselves. Sitting on my breezy porch, listening to the ocean waves, I finally feel peace. They tried to use my service to break me, but they forgot that the military didn't make me weak. It made me a survivor. If you were in my place, would you have remained silent until the final court date? Or would you have fought back sooner? Comment your thoughts below. I've left 2 other incredible stories on the screen that I know will surprise you. Thank you so much for watching.